So now we come to what is, I suppose, very much the anchor leg. The best men. Mr. Paul Hopkins and Mr. Thomas Avery. And I've said Paul's name first because he bunged me a tenner earlier. Now, magnates both of the retail and music industries respectively. It won't have escaped your attention, particularly the ladies amongst you, that you have before you two very good-looking best men. But as I walk behind them and get eye level, I can see there's an inch of mascara on both of them. Each. So, without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome your best men.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. James Glacier. Is this working? Hello. Yeah, we might have to stand further apart. Stand by these guys. That'll do. Can everyone hear us? Yeah. Let's go. Up to you. So we had no idea where to start really with, writing a best man speech. It's the first sort of real wedding out of a group of the stags that went away. But one thing I did read somewhere, a good bit of advice. A good best man speech, I was advised, should take no longer than it takes the groom to make love. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, we give you Mr. and Mrs. Tuck. Thank you. Thank you. All right, we're joking. Although that is how long he takes. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who don't know us, I'm Tom. And I'm Paul. And we've been best friends with with George. Look, give us a break, right? We've been best friends with George for over 15 years now, through school and post-school. Yeah, I think, in fact, the only time we haven't spent with you, George, is when we went to separate universities. Even then, we couldn't get rid of you. We're pretty tough now. Anyway, it is tradition for the best man speech just to run through a few formal bits. So, Tom. Firstly, what a fantastic day we've had. I think you'll all agree. It's clear that a huge amount of planning and organising has gone into creating or making this such a special ceremony for us all to be part of. And we'd like you to all kind of join us in a round of applause for those who've spent the months planning and organising. And yeah, let's hear it for Richard and Claire and Patrick and Tracy. Secondly, on behalf of the bridesmaids, Chloe, Rachel, Holly, Helen, Jess, Emily and Ava. You did it! That's the first time he's got it right. That took me a month. We'd like to thank George for his kind words. I'm sure you all agree, ladies and gentlemen, that the girls look gorgeous today and have done a fantastic job. So please, let's have another round of applause for the bridesmaids. Thirdly, the ushers, legends, lads. Not looking quite as gorgeous as the bridesmaids, it has to be said, but certainly haven't scrubbed up too badly, and a top effort throughout the day, lads. So let's hear it for the ushers. And finally, the main event, our bride, Natalie. Nat, what can we say? You look stunning. Ladies and gentlemen, our bride. It's all a bit nicey, isn't it? So where are we? Open with a gag, yes.
Beautiful bridesmaids, yes.
Ushers, lads, check.
Parents,
Yeah.
top planning.
Yeah, Nat's a babe, etc. Done.
Ah, yes. The groom.
George Glenn Tuck. Now, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen, we did have a really good speech that we'd genuinely spent weeks organising, planning, rehearsing, everything. But about an hour ago, a very worried George, full to the brim of OCD, wasp bite on his lip, comes up to us and says, you know, he just wanted to make sure we weren't going to go too hard on him.
See, most of us here know George well, and to some he's even like a brother. But for those of you who don't know George well, you're probably blissfully unaware of his serious but distinctive split personality.
As we said, George came up to us about an hour ago, and I'll show you exactly how it went down. Boys, you're top boys, you two, top boys, top effort throughout the day, yeah. Really appreciate it. Go easy on the old best man speech, so yeah. Don't want to end up with any borrow and beg on me boat race. For those of you who don't speak Cockney, we didn't want to end up with egg on face.
So for those of you that weren't aware of his split personality, you are probably just familiar with this George Tuck.
This is the George that Patrick is so disillusioned with.
He's mild-mannered, kind, caring, intelligent, successful in his line of work.
If selling Kit Kats counts as a job.
A talented sportsman. Former head boy of the top state school in the country, Colchester Royal Grammar School.
Oh, I love school so much, I'm going to get married there. Bit of a closet nerd. However, there is another side. As I mentioned, George came up to us. He was clearly worried that not only Natalie's parents will discover a thus far hidden side to him,
He looks so
but
funny, doesn't he?
It's your Yeah, he mentioned that you know, he was worried that Natalie's parents might discover a thus far hidden side to him, but he also said there are even certain things he's managed to keep from his own family over the years.
George, I personally thought it was all a little bit unnecessary. We're not bad guys. You know, Tom and Paul, those really good-looking guys.
Exceptional haircuts.
But George, being George, just to be clear, ladies and gentlemen, handed us a list. All the things that we were absolutely 100% not allowed to mention in the speech.
I think I've got it, actually. I do.
Hey, Tom, we've rehearsed the speech. Let's stick to the script.
Yeah. Number one, ex-girlfriends. I'm really not sure why he's put that on here. I don't think there are any.
Oh, Betty, obviously.
Yeah, apart from that lucky lady. No, I think he's just trying to make himself look like some sort of player. We all know he's pretty woeful when it comes to conversing with the opposite sex. In fact, it'll come to no surprise to a few of you, well, all of you, that it was actually Nat who made the first move when they got together. She used Sned as bait. But that's a story for another time, I'm afraid. Come on.
I'm the good one.
No, come on.
Number 2, alcohol. Well, I guess you don't have the best reputation for being around alcohol.
A few examples here.
Oh, it's
What else we got on the list? Being a public nuisance.
That's Epsom, right?
Yeah, that's you're not supposed to be on that side of the fence, mate.
Quinn's about to come along. There's also a running theme with someone else who's in that picture.
What's else on his list?
Number 4. What's that one say? Your writing's terrible. Being what in public?
Sick.
Oh, being sick in public.
Number 5. Don't mention anything to do with V Festival 2007.
Henry, go on, Henry.
You get to it.
Oh dear.
But then you can't mention V Festival 2008.
What else we got here? Don't mention anything to do with the police. I don't know what that's about.
Oh.
Weird. Number 8.
Cross-dressing? No, that's this morning.
Close your legs, sweetheart.
It's dressed as you, I think. Well, that's no disrespect.
Absolutely do not mention anything about his homosexual tendencies. There are a few people here, myself included, who did express an element of surprise when George announced his engagement to Natalie, who is a female. Jackson, looks like yours. That ice cream.
I told you you'd be in this taxi.
10.
10. Unnecessary nakedness.
Is a man who is known to hate being clothed. Three things together here. What happened on the stag do in Amsterdam? Do not mention that, he's put.
Then he says you can't mention what happened on the stag do in Berlin.
Yeah, when you have a stag do in 3 cities, what happened on the stag do in Cardiff? Biff.
Oh, you've stitched me up, haven't you?
I haven't written the list. This is George's list.
Yeah, but you went odds.
Yeah, true. I did give you this one deliberately.
Number 14. Disabled toilets. That's it.
Moving on. Very, very quickly. 15. Don't talk about how I'm a cockney. Being a cockney.
Being a cockney.
For a start, I'm pretty sure rule 1 of being a cockney is you have to have had something to do with London to even qualify.
Yeah, George, you must be the only person to have left Manningtree, a well-spoken young man, for the academia of Nottingham University, and quite simply, inexplicably, returned as a West Ham supporting cockney who once claimed to have thrown multiple Millwall fans off a moving train.
Did actually see him do it, to be fair. It's true. 16. This is a good one. Nando's.
I'm not sure about this one.
Come on.
No, I think Nat
I mean,
got pretty upset about this. We're not doing it.
I think she dumped him over it. I mean, look, he's written it down on the blacklist, but we have just revealed the other 15 points on this list. Why stop now?
No, we're not doing it. I'm not responsible.
All right, let's wrap it up. Let's move on to the sentimental. Yeah?
Or we could ask the guests. Would the guests like to hear the Nando story? It's not our fault then, is it?
Then it's not our fault if we tell it.
So, can we tell it?
All right, great idea. I'm actually glad we get to tell this one because it displays a few of his traits that we've already covered beautifully, all in one story. Paul, do you remember how it starts?
I do, Thomas. It goes back to George's university days. It's the final day of exams. George is heading out with his friends to celebrate, as you do. Now, for those of you paying attention for the last few minutes, you'll be well aware that George is not a man that says, "No thanks, I've had enough to drink. I'm going to head back home and get my 10 hours of kit." And nor is he a man to shy away from a bit of public disorder, are you? Claire, cover your ears. She doesn't know all the details. I believe George and his friends were heading to a popular student nightclub with the unfortunate name of ISIS in Nottingham.
The only issue being is that on a Wednesday, it isn't a student club. It converts to a strip club. I'll let you fill in the details, but a few hours later, George is £200 poorer and decides to call it a night. All right now.
I remember my first wedding.
George is £200 poorer, decides to call it a night, stumbles out of ISIS and spots the lights of Nando's opposite. He's hungry, crosses the road, discovers that Nando's is shut. What do? You do what anybody here would have done the same thing, surely. You climb on the roof and have a nap. A few hours go past. It's 4 a.m. George wakes up, realises he's stuck, can't get down. Now what do? Reaches for his phone. Somehow he's still got it. Calls a few people. In fact, let's have a show of hands who received a phone call from George at that point, 4 a.m. That was Nat home. That looks like George's entire phone book. Anyway, one man picks up. Henry Tile. He's over there at the back. He's a pilot.
I'm single.
And single, ladies. Anyway, George is up on the roof. Calls Henry. Henry picks up. Okay, I can help. He's also a student in Nottingham, and he's also just finished a night out. He's still dressed as a caveman, but he can help. He jumps into a cab, heads over to Nando's. Gets up there. Basically, this is where things get a little weird. Excuse me. While George is waiting for Henry, he decides to entertain himself by kicking out the N and the D of the main Nando's sign, leaving them with a brand new sign of Anos.
He never was the best at spelling, was he?
You can see what he was trying to do, though. It's points for artistic merit. Anyway, Henry arrives, keeps the meter running, helps him down with the N and the D in tow. Perfect memento for any student accommodation in Nottingham. Henry, basically they pile into the taxi. They head back towards wherever your student hovel was. George gets out of the cab. He's got the N under his arm. He's balancing the D on his shoulder. Not for the first time. And leans into the taxi driver and pays the fare. Henry's helped him out. I'll get this, mate. Leans in, pays the tenner. Goes back to his front door. Before he does, turns back to the cabbie. Another tenner. Leans in. You ain't seen nothing, mate.
I can't imagine what that looked like the next day. All joking aside though, George, it is a real privilege and an honour for Tom and I to be your best men and part of such a wonderful day. You are very special to both of us and to everybody in this room.
George is a true friend who never ceases to amaze with his kindness. He always gives without any thought of reward, and he's a role model of a friend, and he's also a role model of a man.
You've met an amazing person in Nat.
She will literally laugh at anything, which is great for me.
And I think I speak for everybody here when I wish you both a very happy future together.
We're not done yet. We are probably we're probably the worst people here to offer any sort of relationship-based advice. But Google said we had to at this point. I've even got a court case in a month. I'd love it if it wasn't true. I did recently read a quote, though. I did recently read a quote. All right. I did recently. Oh, look, what are you doing?
It's not him.
Did I all say that?
Not guilty.
Get their attention. I did recently read a quote, though, that I thought was very apt for love in the current age. And that was, "May your love be modern enough to survive the times and old-fashioned enough to last forever."
Ladies and gentlemen, if you can please be upstanding. Raise your glasses. Ladies and gentlemen, to the bride and groom.
To the bride and groom.